Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to Razorback Chat number 3 with our Vice Chancellor and Athletic Director, Mr. Hunter Yurachek. And without further ado, I'd love to get this started. Mr. Yurachek, it's an honor to have you, like I said before. Once again, my name is Bilal Rabbani, and I'll be the one interviewing today. Really quick, I'm going to give you a summary of how this will work. We will first start off by having you introduce yourself and giving a brief overview of your journey. Then we will dive into an actual interview. So if you could give us a brief summary of your journey and your role as an athletic director, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bilal, for that introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of my journey to the University of Arkansas. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself personally. I've been married to Jennifer for about 27 years. That's key because that's almost as long as I've been in this business. And that's one key component to, I think, a successful journey through college athletics is to have a supportive partner in your life along that journey. We have 3 boys. Ryan is assistant on the football program here at the University of Arkansas, coaches offensive line. He was a student athlete. Jake is a junior linebacker here at the University of Arkansas, obviously also a student athlete. And our youngest son, Brooks, is 16 years old. He's a sophomore at Fayetteville High School, and he also has aspirations to be a student athlete somewhere 2 to 3 years from now. So I've been in this business, as I said, this is my 28th year in college athletics administration. I went to a small Division III school, Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. I went to Guilford College because that was the place that I had enough talent to play basketball at. And will never trade my experience for being a student athlete at Guilford College. About 1,200 students. Had an opportunity at a small school like that to know just about everyone there. Got an undergraduate degree in business, but along my journey at Guilford, I started a sports administration program during my junior year that I took a few classes in prior to graduation to kind of spark my interest in this field. But after I got out of Guilford, I went to work for a bank for a year, probably the worst year of my life. Banking is for some people, it was not for me. It was not, I didn't enjoy the same routine day after day after day, going to work at 8 or 9 o'clock, getting off at 5 o'clock and virtually doing the same thing. So I went back to graduate school, got my master's in sports administration at the University of Richmond. And as part of that, I had to find either write a thesis or do an internship of 400 hours. Obviously, I wanted to get paid for that internship, but I got some great advice along my journey in graduate school where a professor told us during a lecture that if we wanted to get to college athletics, we may have to work for free at some point in time. Well, I had just taken out a loan to go to the University of Richmond. I was working a job at night to pay for my rent and things of that nature. And it was like, there's no way I'm working anywhere for free. Somebody's going to pay me to work for free. Well, my girlfriend, Jennifer, now my wife at the time, lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, and wanted to get somewhere near her. I'd applied for a paid internship at Wake Forest that I did not get. And when I was talking to the gentleman who had interviewed for me that job, I asked him if there's any other opportunities. And he said, we just hired a new director of marketing. He looks like he is overwhelmed. You may want to reach out to him. I reached out to him, got a meeting with him on a Friday. He told me that he didn't have any money to pay for an intern until the first of the year. So this was roughly May or June when I was getting this interview, and the light bulb went off in my head. And I said, hey, let me tell you what. I said, I'll work for free for the next 6 months if when you get to January the 1st, if I've done a great job, I get a first crack at that paid internship. He agreed, and the following Monday, I started my unpaid internship at Wake Forest University. So I worked for 6 months without making a penny. And then January 1st of the following year, I got a big raise to $1,000 a month for the next 18 months. And then for the following 3 years, I got a big raise to $2,000 a month. So 5 years into my athletic administration journey, I had grossed $90,000. You break that down by years, that's $18,000 a year for 5 years. I had a number of friends that I had gone to high school and college with that were making significantly more money than I was making. They were buying nice cars. They had bought their first home. They were going on nice trips. Jennifer and I were not doing those things. But you know what? They didn't have a passion for their job. I had a passion for my job, and I had a love for what I was doing. And quite honestly, that carried me through those, what I will call some very lean years from a monetary standpoint. And so that's my journey, and my advice to each of you as you're looking, whether it's this field or another field. And I say this to all of our graduating seniors: do what you love and love what you do. I have been in this profession now, as I said, almost 30 years. I probably have another 15 years before I can retire. That's 45 years. You better really enjoy what you're doing. And that's why I say do what you love and love what you do and have a passion for it. And I truly believe if you have a passion for it, eventually the monetary piece will take care of itself, because you will do a really, really good job. And those same friends that are still my friends 25 years later, they still don't like their jobs very much. And I think I'm probably a little bit better off than them financially now. Plus, I have a passion for my job. So I'm in a much better place. But so a little bit about my journey and some of the sacrifices and challenges you have to make in college athletics is, if you want to get ahead in this business, you're going to have to be mobile. You're going to have to move. I have been at 8 different institutions since 1993. My journey has taken me from Wake Forest to Vanderbilt to Western Carolina University, which is a small FCS school in the Southern Conference. From there to the University of Virginia, on to the University of Akron, to my first athletic director job at Coastal Carolina University, and then to the University of Houston, and then on to Arkansas. So that's 8 different institutions in the past 27, 28 years. So that's why I say having a supportive spouse, a supportive partner is really important, because it's that's probably the hardest on them and your children to move that many times. For me, I was just going to my next job. I was going to the office every day. I was instantly making friends and colleagues. Much easier adjustment for me to move. Really tough on your families to move, but that is kind of a nature of this business to get ahead. To put that in perspective, I could have stayed at Wake Forest now and probably moved up the ranks at Wake Forest. The athletic director at Wake Forest that hired me just retired last year. And so I could have stayed there, and I may or may not have gotten the athletic director job. Who knows, 27, 28 years later. But your mobility in college athletics is going to be hindered if you're not willing to move. Does that make sense? There's a huge time commitment. I think most jobs take a huge time commitment, but obviously there's a huge time commitment in college athletics, because you have your day job, which is getting ready for athletic events, most of which occur at nights and on the weekends. And so that's you're preparing for those things. And so you have very few nights and you have very few weekends. Obviously, we talked about the financial piece. The financial piece early on in this career is not great, but I think what you get back from working in college athletics far outweighs the financial gains early on. So that's a little bit about my journey. So what does an athletic director do? I'll specifically say here at the University of Arkansas. So we have 19 sports programs, 465 student athletes, 300 employees that make up our Department of Athletics. And so my job is to work with those 300 employees to create opportunities for those 465 student athletes that make up our 19 sports to have success in 3 areas: academically, athletically, and in their personal development as young men and women when they're on our campus. And so we mark academic success by earning your degree at the University of Arkansas. We mark athletic success by having the opportunity to compete for and win conference and national championships. And then that third piece is that we help these young men and women grow as young men and women. And I say if we have success in those 3 areas, academically, athletically, and in the personal development of young men and women, that they leave the University of Arkansas equipped with the skill set to be a champion in life in whatever they decide to do. And so there's a lot that goes into creating those experiences, but that's really what my job is in a nutshell, is to work with our staff. And what I found out is 11 years as an athletic director, there is absolutely no way that I can know everything that goes on in our department. What I have to do as a leader is hire great people, give them a definitive direction, and let them do their jobs. And they will communicate what they believe that I need to know when I need to know it, so that I'm not caught off guard. And what I tell our staff is I don't believe that every decision has to come to my office. What I give them the leeway to make decisions that our focus is on the success of our student athletes. And I tell them, if you're making a decision that you truly believe is in the best interest of the success of our student athletes, you can't go wrong with that decision. It may end up being the wrong decision, but if you truly believe that it was in the best interest of our student athletes and their success in one of those three areas, then I'm going to trust that you made the right decision. So that's kind of how we set the tone. So, and why I can't know everything that goes on in our department as a director of athletics, let me read a list of constituents that I have to communicate with on a fairly regular basis. Our board of trustees, which is made up of 10 people, our system president, our university chancellor, university administration, faculty, of course, our coaches, our student athletes, our athletic administration, and our support staff, our over 7,000 donors, season ticket holders, parents of student athletes, members of the media, sponsors, government officials, people that work in the Southeastern Conference office, and people that work at the NCAA office. Those are just a few of the groups of constituents that I have to communicate with on a regular basis. So you can see, you've got to, in my role, especially at this level, you have to hire great people, give them direction, and trust that they're going to do what you need to do to have a successful athletic department. So
I absolutely loved everything you said. I think the biggest thing that caught my ear was in the beginning, a lot of your friends and everyone around you are going to be spending money left and right that you might not have, but it's the passion of the job. And that's something that I think all of us students who are going into the business of sports have to relay that message to our parents, to our friends, like, listen, we might not be making right now a lot of money, but just have faith in me. And I think that's where it comes from, having a great partner. So I hope I can find that future wife as well. Our topic to off everything is leadership. We've heard of your philosophy on organizational structure and culture. More specifically, your coffee bean analogy. Could you explain and tell us a little bit more about that?
very simple analogy that I introduced to our staff about a year and a half ago and didn't know how appropriate it was going to be as we headed into this COVID and this pandemic that shut our athletic department down almost a year ago, and how we're going to need this. But quite simply, the coffee bean analogy goes, how are you going to act in the face of adversity, or when life throws challenges at you? In a sense, when you're sitting in a pot of boiling water, how are you going to respond? Are you going to be like a carrot who gets weak and soft when you're put into that hot water? Are you going to be like an egg that gets hard and bitter when you get in that hot water? Or are you going to be like a coffee bean? And what happens to a coffee bean when it connects with hot water? It transforms the environment that it's in to something that most of us like a great deal, coffee, right? It transforms its environment in hot water. And so I encouraged our staff, hey, let's be coffee beans this year. We're going to face challenges along the way. Absolutely had no idea that we're going to face COVID. But when we face these challenges, let's not get soft and weak. Let's not get hard and bitter, but let's take that environment, that hot water, and let's transform it. Especially as we face COVID, that's what our department, our staff, and our student athletes have done. They've transformed their environment. We've successfully competed in almost now 125 athletic events since September the 18th when we started competing. We have not been the cause of one athletic event to be canceled so far this year. Now, we had to postpone our football game versus Missouri, but you look at all the game postponements and cancellations in Razorback athletic teams, we have not caused one to be canceled. And then we have 16 teams competing right now. 13 of those 16 teams that are competing are ranked in the top 25 nationally. Top 25 nationally, 13 out of 16. And the other three that are not ranked, our volleyball team is 10-4, our women's tennis team is 5-0, and our men's tennis team is 6-2. Those are the three teams that aren't currently ranked. And that's what I say, like our department, our student athletes, they have truly transformed this environment this year.
Thank you, Mr. Yurachek. You've actually briefly kind of talked about a lot of the teams that you're involved in, and not a lot of athletic directors are involved in all the sports on campus. How do you balance equally supporting all sports, leading a workforce, and your home life as well?
I said before, I'm the director of athletics at the University of Arkansas. We have 19 sports programs and 465 student athletes. We just don't have a football team, a basketball team, and a baseball team. We have 19 sports programs, and I value the experience of each and every one of our 465 student athletes, and I want to be supportive of them. And the only time I'm going to miss an athletic event that's on our campus is if one of my boys has a conflicting athletic event that they're going to be a part of. And I've told student athletes before, I had my oldest son played football at Marshall University. I had to travel on some Friday and Saturday nights to see his games, and I missed some football games at the University of Houston while I was the director of athletics. And how I explain that is nobody on that football team at the University of Houston was going to know or remember if their old athletic director was at one of their games. But 10 years from now, my son was going to know if I was at his games. And the other piece, I don't have any hobbies. I don't play golf. I don't hunt. I don't fish because I prioritize my faith, my family, and college athletics. That's how I'm able to make my time. I get up about 5:15 every morning. I say from 5:15 to 7:15 is my time. That's when I read and have my time in devotion and prayer, and I get my workout in most days. And then after that, it's University of Arkansas. And if my son has an event, a basketball game right now, it'll be on my calendar. And so I know that by putting that on my calendar, that's someplace I have to be at.
Thank you so much. Once so much responsibility comes, it's good to hear that there's a time and place for everything, and that's something that we all are taking note of. The next question I would like to ask is, what personal quality do you feel is the most effective in working your way to the top of the sports industry? Is there a quality that you wish you would spend more time developing?
I hope I've developed it, and I hope I'm pretty good at it, but I think it's a simple kind of life quality that you just treat people the right way. And I think if you treat every person you come in contact with, whether it's in college athletics or just in life in general, if you treat them the right way with respect and dignity and an open mind to what they believe in and what they stand for, I think that will help you in whatever career you decide. I know it's helped me in college athletics because every job I've had an opportunity to kind of interview for or compete for, somebody's opened that door for me. Somebody's made a connection for me. There's been people that were with me at Wake Forest that helped me get a job at the University of Houston. And that was 20 years later. And so, it's really key that, when you move on, that you move on the right way, that you don't burn any bridges, because I always say you never know when you're going to have to go back across that bridge. And so I think that's one of the keys to really anything in life, is just how you treat and interact with people and how you communicate with people. And look, it doesn't mean that along the way I haven't disagreed with a number of people and people have disagreed with me, but that's okay to have varying opinions and disagree. And I think that's part of what's the matter with our country right now is we're not okay with somebody having a different opinion or different stance or different belief than we have. And that's okay. The other piece I'll tell you that I think just incredibly important, I went through that list of people that I have to communicate with on a regular basis. Well, you got to be a great communicator, and you've got to know how to communicate up. You've got to know how to communicate to your left and to your right, and you need to know how to communicate down, because you have to communicate to a variety of people at a variety of times on a variety of issues. And if you don't put that as a priority and you don't understand that, it's going to be a struggle for you for sure.
Absolutely. And, it's good to hear as well that people of your stature continually growing and getting up that ladder still hold those morals, because you don't see many people or many leaders, I feel, that have that sense of treating people the right way. Our next question is, there's no question that COVID-19 has taken a toll on college sports. However, it is fair that this will not be the last bump in the road for college sports. In your opinion, what are some future events that you foresee shaping the industry, and what are some things that you and your staff are doing to be ready for them?
The number one, it's not an issue, but the number one thing that's coming down is the name, image, and likeness piece. That there's some state legislation that has been introduced in 15 to 20 states. The NCAA has some legislation on the books, as well as there'll be some federal legislation or federal voting that'll probably have to take place. And so that's coming, and that's going to have a dynamic impact on college athletics. And I will tell you, I think it's the right thing to do, to provide student athletes the rights to monetize their name, image, and likeness. It is their name, image, and likeness. And if you're not familiar, what happens right now is student athletes, when they sign over their rights to their name, image, and likeness to the institution that they're at, so that we can use that for promotions and things of that nature, and that they can't use that to monetize themselves. And so if you're not a student athlete, you can take your name, image, and likeness. You can use social media to go out and gain a sponsorship through your social media account, if you have a powerful social media account, and monetize that. Student athletes currently can't do that. And quite honestly, the main reason that's that way is to protect against, I'll say it, cheating in the recruiting process, so that sponsors, donors, whatever you want to call them, behind the scenes can't arrange for a student athlete to be paid significant dollars to sponsor a car dealership or be a spokesperson for a car dealership that's probably not a legitimate job or a legitimate function of that name, image, and likeness. And so the reason this has been held up so long is because we can't find out a way to legislate basic human integrity, to keep people from bending the rules, finding loopholes, and paying student athletes that are in high school through a name, image, and likeness agreement to come to your institution during the recruiting process. So that's kind of what the holdup is, but that's the main kind of thing that's coming down in college athletics that I think will change how college athletics is managed and run. And the way we're dealing with that, right now we're getting ready to hire a senior associate athletic director for athlete brand development. We're working with the Walton College of Business to develop some educational programming for our student athletes. And we're going to teach student athletes how to use their name, image, and likeness to monetize that. And it's not all about the monetization. You want to have a great name, image, and likeness when you graduate from college. And so we're going to also teach student athletes a great brand and a great image for you, so that when you leave college, that it helps you when you're trying to seek employment after your time at the University of Arkansas is done.
Thank you, Mr. Yurachek. Yeah, that's a topic that a lot of students talk about and have opinions on in class. So I'm excited to see whether that's going to even affect gameplay as well. Our next question is, we get a lot of advice from people with different perspectives when connecting with people in our desired industries. What is one thing you wish you had known when reaching out to someone of your stature, and what sticks out to you?
When I would meet an athletic director or come in contact with an athletic director, I developed kind of a mailing list. And I would send every athletic director that was on my mailing list a card at the beginning of the athletic season, just wishing them good luck on a season. If they had a team that won a championship, I would send them a handwritten note congratulating them for winning a championship. They'd get a Christmas card from me if I saw that, whether they had a child or something like that. And the only reason I did that was just to keep my name in front of them. Most of the time, athletic directors are busy. It's hard for them to take a phone call from you. Returning emails becomes problematic. But I can tell you, I've got a stack of note cards on my desk that I retain and hold on to, and they're in a file because the art of a handwritten note is becoming a lost art, and I'm telling you, bring it back. And that's one of the things I think is very valuable. And it's how you build your relationships with people. I mean, that's what's going to carry you through this profession, is relationships. I mentioned that every time I've had an opportunity to get my foot in the door for a job, somebody's opened that door for me. Somebody knew somebody that got my name in front of somebody else. Okay, so let me just give you an example of like an entry-level job in our Department of Athletics. We may get for, let's say, an assistant director of sports marketing. There may be 100 to 150 applications that we will receive. The way I would break that up is an A, a B, and a C pile. An A pile is going to be someone that has some practical experience and educational experience in sports marketing. The B pile is going to be maybe somebody that has one or two of those characteristics, and the C pile is going to be you don't have any of those. And you can get from the B pile to the A pile if somebody I know calls me and says, hey, I know this person, I work for them, they work for me, they're really good, you need to take a look at them. And you can get to the top of the A pile with something like that as well. So it's a very competitive environment, and you've got to make sure that your name gets to the top of that A pile, because there'll be 50 people in that A pile that have had a year or two experience, and they've got the master's in sports administration. And so how do you separate yourself? You separate yourselves a lot of times with those relationships you have with somebody that's a decision maker at that place you're applying for the job.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yurachek. We really appreciate your detail and all the answers. Absolutely love that, especially since we're all networking at the time. So we're definitely going to be following some of those ideals that you have. That's all the questions that we have. However, I'm going to open up to the audience to ask some questions. If you have questions, please unmute yourself and go ahead. Thank you.
I've got a question over here. Hi, Mr. Yurachek. My name's Jeremy. My question is, with name, image, and likeness coming up, how will this reshape the athletic department? Like, will compliance expand, or will there be like a whole new department within athletics to deal with all of this?
Well, I can tell you, and I mentioned earlier, like we're hiring a senior associate AD for athlete brand development. And so that's the start of kind of a name, image, likeness unit within our department. Many Department of Athletics are hiring third-party firms to manage this for them. I felt like it was better to have this person housed within our Department of Athletics that had direct relationships with our chief legal counsel, with our compliance department, with our marketing and sponsorship group, with our donor group, so that we made sure, first of all, that those name, image, and likeness relationships that our student athletes develop were on the up and up. And then that we were not dependent on somebody else that also had another 1,000 student athletes from various institutions to manage that. I thought that we provided the best service to our student athletes at the University of Arkansas to create our own internal department. Right now, to date, I think we're the only ones that have done that. Most, again, are hiring a third-party firm to manage that for their student athletes.
What are some of the habits or methods that you practiced in the beginning stages of your journey into college athletics that helped you get through those beginning stages?
Well, I mean, I will tell you, I'm a goal-oriented person, so I set goals. I set kind of where I wanted to be 10 years into my career, where I wanted to be 20 years into my career, and what sacrifices I was willing to make, Jonathan, to accomplish those goals, and what I thought I needed to do to accomplish those goals, from building relationships to reading leadership books. To, at the time, there was a weekly newspaper called the NCAA News, and I used to read that from cover to cover. Now you've got the Sports Business Journal. Just reading, trends in the this field, developing contacts, and just learning by osmosis, like just being a sponge and soaking everything in. When you're looking for jobs, don't just say because the ACC and the SEC and those Power 5 schools look great. Some of your best learning experiences are going to be at smaller schools, because you're going to get to touch and feel so many more aspects of that Department of Athletics. The biggest mistake I ever made in my kind of journey was I left Western Carolina to go to the University of Virginia. And I went to the University of Virginia. My dad had gone to school there. My sister was in law school there. That was like my dream job. But I went from having a seat at the table at Western Carolina and being involved in every single aspect of the department to just being the marketing director for the Virginia football program. I was bored to death and knew I'd made the wrong decision 60 days into being at the University of Virginia.
Just in the interest of time, we'll ask a final question here. And the topic of today's leadership. And so I know that a lot of people sort of have their go-to leadership book. You talked about your 2 hours of time in the morning where you spend reading, working out, et cetera. Do you have a book, a leadership book, or a book about the industry that's sort of your go-to book that you recommend young professionals look at?
I think one of the books we read as a senior staff recently was called Leaders Eat Last. which I thought was a really good book. I think that we got a great deal out of that. Simon Sinek, I believe, is the author of that. Really, really good book about leadership and where you fall if you're going to be, like, I'm big into the servant leadership piece. The Way of the Shepherd is kind of a faith-driven leadership book. Lead for God's Sake is another one that I feel, and so I think those are the types of leadership books that I have gravitated through throughout my life, and I think help you as far as being a servant leader, treating people the right way, and not climbing over people to get to the top.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yurachek. It's not many times in our lives that we can, hear advice from an athletic director like you of your stature. So I think this is something that we all really do appreciate and will remember for a long time. So just wanted to say thank you again for spending time with us and giving us advice. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the students as well. We really appreciate all your time.
My pleasure. Good luck to each of you.